The internet has been locked on two names for weeks. Two names tied to one masked figure. One disappeared 84-year-old woman, and a case that the more you look at it, music keeps handing you answers that produce even bigger questions. By the music time this video is over, you will understand exactly why those two names keep music surfacing. You will understand the forensic detail that separates music them, and you will understand why even with a family cleared by law enforcement, and the science running in a private laboratory in Florida right now does not care about press releases. Stay with this because nothing about what happened in Tucson, Music, Arizona on the morning of February 1st, 2026 is simple. And the man behind that masked music has not been identified. Not yet. Here is what the evidence music actually shows. At 1:47 a.m. on Sunday, February 1st, 2026. But the doorbell camera at a quiet residential home in the Catalina Foothills neighborhood of Tucson, Arizona, went offline. Not from a power failure, not from a technical glitch. The device was interfered with physically. A figure approached the front door in the dark, attempted to knock the camera off, its mount with light taps, music, and when that failed, covered the lens with foliage pulled from a potted plant nearby. FBI Director Kash Patel confirmed this publicly when the Bureau released the footage 9 days later. The data, he stated, he had been successfully recovered from the device, music, despite the interference. 41 minutes later at 2:28 a.m., a second digital signal went silent. The music pacemaker app on Nancy Guthrie's phone. The application synced to the cardiac device, keeping an 84-year-old woman's heart in rhythm disconnected. Those 41 music minutes are the operative window. You know, that is when investigators believe Nancy Ellen Guthrie, mother of NBC Today, co-anchor Savannah Guthrie, was physically removed from the home she had lived in since 1985. Music. Think about that for a moment. Someone planned this down to the signal. Nancy was not reported missing until noon that same day, February 1st, when family members arrived at her home after she failed to appear at church. Deputies arrived minutes after the 12:03 p.m. call. The Puma Music County Sheriff himself, Chris Nanos. I came to the scene. When that alone tells you the weight of what investigators found when they walked through that property. Nanos later said publicly, "You don't typically get the sheriff out at a scene like this, but it's very concerning what we're learning." Biological material confirmed as NY's was recovered from the front porch. The FBI joined the investigation within days and established a music 24-hour command post in Tucson. Yet the Pima County Sheriff made one thing immediately clear to the public. Nancy Guthrie did not wander. She could not have, Nanos stated directly. She couldn't walk 50 yards by herself. Music. She was classified by investigators as a vulnerable adult, aged 84, with mobility limitations, reliant on daily medication, a pacemaker, and no known cognitive impairments. Whoever removed her from that residence understood all of that. They planned around it, and they accounted for the time it would take to move her. And they executed that plan in the dark, in under 41 minutes, music, without triggering a single neighbor response. This was not random, this was architecture. By February 10th, the FBI released still images and a short video clip from the doorbell camera. The footage showed a masked individual on NY's property, fully covered, ski mask, gloves, zipped jacket, and carrying a black 25-liter Ozark Trail hiker backpack, sold exclusively at Walmart, with what appeared to be a firearm secured in a belly B-band holster, worn incorrectly over the outside of a thick jacket. 2 days later, on February 12th, the FBI released a physical profile of the subject based on forensic analysis of that music footage. Male, approximately 5 feet 9 inches to 5 feet 10 inches tall. Average build, dark facial hair, a mustache or goatee visible beneath the lower edge of the mask. Former FBI Supervisory Special Agent and criminal profiler Jim Clemente are reviewing the footage for Fox News. Digital identified what appeared to be a marking on the subject's right wrist. Music, possibly a tattoo. His statement was precise. If confirmed through forensic analysis, that detail could help investigators rule individuals in or out of the suspect music pool. That is not speculation, and that is a trained former federal agent communicating that the FBI was already cross-referencing music, that physical marker against known individuals in the case. Write those numbers down. A 5'9" to 5'10". Average build, dark facial hair, possible wrist marking. Hold them. They are going to matter in a way most of the coverage of this case has failed to fully explain. Now, before we go any further, if you are new to this channel and this music case pulled you here through the algorithm and through a share, through someone who told you to watch this, welcome. Music. Drop a comment right now and tell us where you are watching from and what time it is there. Seriously. And people from across the country and around the world have been tracking this investigation from the beginning. And we want to know who is in this room tonight. And if you are not subscribed yet, do it now, hit subscribe, and turn on the bell. What this video is about to lay out has not been mapped at this level anywhere else. And the next video, the one that covers the DNA results the moment they go public, will change the shape of this case music entirely. You need to be there for that one. Now back to the case. 2 names have dominated the public conversation around who is behind that mask. The first is Tommaso Cioni, NY's son-in-law, married to her daughter Annie since 2006, and the last known person to see Nancy alive after dropping her home from a family dinner on the evening of January 31st. The second is Dominic Evans, a drummer, a Tucson resident, and a man who has been standing in photographs next to Tommaso Cioni for 19 years. iMusic, ever since the two met through a Craigslist ad in 2007, Puma County Sheriff Chris Nanos has publicly stated that Guthrie family members and their spouses, including Keon, have been cleared. In that statement, music exists. It is on record. But here is what the forensic evidence has also confirmed. 2 separate DNA profiles have been recovered from this crime scene. 2 people, not 1. 2. One profile extracted from a nitrial glove found approximately 2 miles from NY's music home near the side of a road on February 13th. A second profile, music, recovered from biological material found inside the residence. The 2 profiles do not match each other, and they do not match any member of the Guthrie family. And as of the latest reporting, neither profile has returned a match in Music CODIS, the FBI's National Criminal Database. So, Music, you have a family cleared. Oh, and you have biological evidence of 2 individuals who've not been identified. Those 2 facts are not in conflict. They are pointing at the same gap. The gap between who investigators have formally cleared and who left music forensic material at this scene. And right now, He's a private laboratory in Florida, is running analysis on that second profile. An investigative genetic genealogy, the same methodology used to identify the Golden State Killer after 4 decades. Music has been initiated on both profiles. The databases are already running. This is where Tommaso Cioni and Dominic Evans enter the frame, not as verdicts, as a forensic framework. Because the man on that porch, the man the FBI described music as 5'9" to 5'10", it connects to both names through a trail of records, timelines, music, and documented relationships. This investigation is going to walk through music, piece by piece. And here's the detail that the height measurement makes impossible to ignore. Multiple music investigative journalists who analyzed photographs of Tommaso standing music next to individuals of publicly known height concluded he exceeds the FBI's physical estimate. Music sum placed him closer to 6 feet. If that analysis is accurate, Cioni does not match the physical profile of the figure on the porch, but the second music name, the drummer from a 2007 Craigslist ad who has stood next to Cioni and banned photographs for 19 years, and who has a criminal record in Puma County, Arizona, and lives within the same geographic music triangle as NY's home. That name fits the numbers. This is not a conclusion. Not yet. The DNA is still running. The genealogy databases are still being built. The Walmart backpack purchase records are being traced. The Belly B band holster is being music tracked through gun stores across Tucson. The cell tower data from the early morning hours of February 1st and from January 23rd, when a figure was captured on a neighbor's Ring camera appearing to conduct a route rehearsal 9 days before the abduction, is being cross-referenced by federal investigators. The investigation is in its most critical window right now. Nancy Guthrie is music, 84 years old. She has a pacemaker. She has been missing for 4 weeks. She was specifically targeted in her home by someone or more than one person who knew her residence, her routines, and her vulnerability. The science will deliver a name. It always does. But between now and that name, there is a 19-year documented relationship, a criminal record, a physical description, and 2 DNA profiles that tell the story of exactly how carefully this was planned and exactly music, how many people it took to execute it. Now that story starts in April of 2007 with a Craigslist ad in Tucson, Arizona, and it runs straight through to the masked figure on a porch at music, 1:47 in the morning, 19 years later. Let's build it from the ground up. Before we go deeper into the evidence, before we pull apart the forensics and the names and the criminal records and the DNA, to music, you need to know who this woman actually is. Because investigators don't solve music cases for statistics, they solve them for people. Nancy Guthrie is not a statistic. She was born Nancy Ellen Long on January 27th, 1942, in Fort Music, Wright, Kentucky, a small suburb just across the Ohio River from Cincinnati. She was raised Catholic. She attended an all-girls elementary school. She enrolled at the University of Kentucky, where she worked the student newspaper, the Kentucky Colonel, as a music society editor, a young woman with a sharp eye for a story and the discipline to report it accurately. Sound familiar? That instinct, but that precision. She passed it down. At a University of Kentucky basketball game, she met Charles Errol Guthrie on a blind date, a mining engineer from Pineville. They married on December 28th, 1963. Charles's work carried them around the world. They lived in Melbourne, Australia, long enough for their youngest daughter to be born there. Savannah on December 27th, music 1971. Then came Tucson, and the family settled into a burnt adobe home in the Catalina foothills near North Music Campbell Avenue and East Skyline Drive in the early 1970s. Nancy was 30 years old. She had 3 children, a husband whose work kept him moving, and a quiet neighborhood in the desert that she would never really leave. Then June 10th, 1988, Charles Guthrie died suddenly of a heart attack during a mining trip in Mexico. He was 49. Savannah was 16 years old, about to start her senior year of high school. Nancy was 46. She didn't fold. She rebuilt. She went to work at the University of Arizona in 1990. First as a music spokesperson for the University Medical Center, then as an associate to the vice music president of University Advancement, she organized the Center Stage music program, and bringing live musicians into the hospital each month for staff, patients, and visitors. Music. She ran MedCamp, a program introducing Arizona high school students to the medical field. She did this work for nearly music 17 years until January 1st, 2007. And her colleagues described her as someone who made the work upbeat, who led with energy, who showed up the same way every single music day. Ask yourself, what kind of person keeps getting up after that kind of loss? At 46, widowed. 46, 3 children, desert Southwest, starting over. Nancy Guthrie is that kind of person, sharp, independent, rooted. By 2026, she was 84 years old, still living alone in that same Catalina foothills home she had moved into more than 5 decades earlier. TP Music, Puma County Sheriff Chris Nanos, described her publicly as sharp as a tack, no cognitive impairment, mentally alert, but physically the years had narrowed her range. She had a pacemaker managing a chronic cardiac condition, and she relied on daily medication. Her mobility was music significantly limited. She was, in the legal language used by investigators, a vulnerable adult. She played mahjong. Music, she attended Bible study. She hosted dinners. She never missed Sunday church at St. Andrew's Presbyterian. And on the evening of January 31st, Music 2026, she had dinner with her daughter Annie and son-in-law Tommaso Cioni. Routine, familiar. The kind of evening that happens in every family. Someone comes over. You eat, you talk, they take you home. Cyan dropped her off at her Catalina Foothills residence at approximately 9:50 p.m. She walked inside. Music. The front door closed behind her. That was the last confirmed music sighting of Nancy Guthrie by anyone who knew her. The next morning, a member of her church, Music, noticed she hadn't appeared for the scheduled live stream of the Sunday service. A call was made to the family. Relatives arrived at her home around 11 a.m. They searched the property. They found no sign of her, but they found her phone still inside. Her personal belongings still music inside. Every essential item exactly where it should be. Everything except Nancy. They called 911 at noon. And from the moment deputies walked through that front door on, this stopped being a wellness check and became something else entirely. The Puma County Sheriff arrived personally, and the evidence found at Music that property, the biological material confirmed as NYs near the front entrance, the disabled camera, the pacemaker app that had gone Music offline at 2:28 a.m., told investigators everything they needed to know about what had happened in that house in the dark. This was not a woman who wandered, and this was not confusion or disorientation or a fall in the desert. This was a woman with a pacemaker and limited mobility who had been specifically chosen, specifically targeted in a home she had lived in for 5 decades by someone who knew exactly what they were walking into. That detail, the precision of it, is what makes the next name matter. It starts with a normal Saturday evening. At 5:32 p.m. on January 31st, 2026, Music Nancy Guthrie ordered an Uber from her Catalina Foothills home and rode to her daughter Annie's house for dinner. Family game night, the kind of evening that happens music in every household in every city. Unremarkable by design. Investigators later confirmed they spoke with that Uber driver. The ride to Annie's house was clean, nothing unusual. She stayed for hours, ate dinner, played games. Music. Then Tommaso Cioni, her son-in-law, married to Annie since 2006, drove her home. At exactly 9:48 p.m., his vehicle pulled up to her residence. The garage door opened at 9:50 p.m. When investigators time-stamped that moment as the last confirmed point at which authorities know Nancy Guthrie was inside her own home, alive and unharmed. Cioni waited until she was inside before pulling away. That detail has been verified. The desert went quiet. Then the clocks become the evidence. At 1:47 a.m., Sunday, the February 1st, music 3 hours and 57 minutes after that garage door closed, the doorbell camera at NY's front entrance disconnected. Not a power music failure, and the device was physically interfered with. FBI Director Kash Patel confirmed the data was recovered from the hardware despite that music interference. At 2:12 a.m., motion detection software, music, on a second camera registered movement on the property. But no footage was saved. St. Nancy had not maintained an active cloud subscription with the provider, which meant the system detected what was happening, but had no mechanism to record it. 25 seconds of movement in the dark. Nothing stored. At 2:28 a.m., NY's pacemaker app, the software synced to the cardiac device managing her heart rhythm, disconnected music from her phone. 41 minutes from camera interference to pacemaker signal loss. That is the operative window. That is when investigators believe she was physically removed from the residence she had occupied, music, for over 5 decades. At 11:56 a.m., the music following morning, family members arrived after Nancy failed to appear for her virtual church service. And they searched music the property for several minutes, found her phone, her belongings, every essential item present except Nancy. They called 911 at 12:03 p.m. Deputies arrived at 12:15 p.m. Sheriff Chris Nanos, music, arrived personally, and investigators also confirmed signs of forced entry at the property and biological material confirmed through DNA, music testing, as NY's, was recovered near the front entrance. Within hours, where the investigation transitioned from a missing persons music call to a federal kidnapping case. Now here is where the 4-hour window becomes forensically significant and where the first name enters the frame. Tommaso dropped Nancy off at 9:48 p.m. He confirmed music. She was inside. He drove away. With the next confirmed event is the camera interference at 1:47 a.m. That gap from 9:50 p.m. to 1:47 a.m. is the window investigators examined. Not because music Cioni is charged with anything he has not been, but because those 4 hours represent the span of time between the last confirmed music safe moment and the beginning of the forensic record. Investigators followed that logic. The FBI searched Annie and Tommaso's Tucson home on February 4th, then returned again to 5 separate visits total. Each return to a home in an active federal investigation carries operational weight. You do not send agents back 5 times for courtesy calls. Publicly documented scrutiny also placed Cion's power of attorney document under examination. An unverified document circulating online showed Tommaso had music transferred a durable power of attorney to Annie for purposes relating to a specific property transaction. But legal analysts who reviewed it noted this type of document is standard in real estate loan closings when one party, music, cannot attend. It is common. It appears in thousands music of transactions across Arizona annually. Official sources confirmed it is not connected to the criminal investigation, but the timing of its public circulation in the middle of a federal kidnapping case fed the speculation. Here's the counterforce to all of that. Sheriff Nanos publicly confirmed that Guthrie family members and their spouses, including Cioni, have been cleared. That statement exists. Music. It is on record. But ask yourself what cleared means in the music context of an active FBI kidnapping investigation with 2 unidentified DNA music profiles still running through genealogy databases. Cleared does not mean the same thing in a press release as it does in a courtroom. It means music. The current evidence does not support bringing charges at this moment. It does not mean the case is closed around any individual. It does not mean new evidence cannot reframe everything. And there is one detail embedded music inside that 4-hour window that has not received enough attention. When Cioni walked Nancy to her front door, music at 9:48 p.m. confirmed she was inside and pulled away. Did he verify the outer gate was secured behind him? That detail has never been asked publicly. Music. And the figure captured on camera in the early hours of February first moved through NY's property without any visible sign of forcing the outer barrier. No prying, no tools, no delay at the gate. The subject moved like someone who already knew the path was clear. That is not a conclusion. It is a question the 4-hour window demands. And the answer, along with the identity of the person who, music, moved through that gate at 1:47 in the morning, is where the next layer of this case begins here. Because in April of 2007, nearly 2 decades before any of this happened, Tommaso Cioni responded to a classified ad in the Tucson Weekly, and the man he met through that ad has a criminal record, lives minutes from New York's home, music, and matches the FBI's physical description of the figure on that porch. Almost exactly 9 days. That is how, music, long the public waited before they saw what investigators had been staring at since the morning of February 1st. On February 10th, Music 2026, an FBI director, Kash Patel, posted 6 black music and white photographs and 3 video clips directly to his social media account. And he described what they showed with precision. An individual wearing a ski mask, gloves, a backpack, music, and a firearm secured in a front holster, approaching Nancy Guthrie's front door in the pre-dawn darkness. The footage had been buried. The Google Nest doorbell camera, music, had been interfered with. But the FBI partnered with Google directly, and Music extracted the data from residual files stored in the device's back-end systems. That detail matters. Whoever was on that porch believed the footage was gone. They were wrong. Watch the footage carefully. Music and the behavioral tells are immediate. The subject approaches with what former FBI Special Agent Brianna Fox described as an almost casual confidence, as though this is familiar territory. Fox's exact observation was that the figure almost saunters up like that's his house. Former FBI Assistant Director Andrew McCabe, also reviewing the footage, I noted the approach was not particularly furtive or concerned. This is not the body language of someone, Music, acting on impulse. This is someone who has already run the route. The subject first attempts to block the camera lens with a gloved hand. When that fails, the individual reaches toward a nearby potted plant, pulls out a shrub. Sand Music uses the foliage to obstruct the device. It takes multiple attempts. Former Puma County SWAT deputy Rob Keeger, with 3 decades of operational experience, told News Nation this sequence of movement suggests Music, someone operating without professional training, rather than a seasoned operative. His words, "The way the subject carries the firearm to the way the holster sits on the body, there's just a lot of things that seem off." 2 former FBI supervisory special agents independently, Music, assessed the firearm holster arrangement. Retired FBI Music agent Steve Moore told CNN the holster appeared to be designed for a large frame revolver, while the weapon appeared to be a compact, semi-automatic pistol. His assessment was blunt. They do not match. The holster is worn incorrectly across the center of the waist on the outside of a thick jacket. It tells investigators 2 things simultaneously. This person wanted to be seen as armed, and this person does not handle these tools regularly. Now, 2 days after the footage dropped on February 12th, the FBI's Video Forensic Analysis Unit completed their on-site assessment. A white Music tent had been erected over NY's front entrance, specifically constructed to replicate the nighttime lighting conditions from the early morning of February 1st. Agents Music, dressed in replica clothing and carrying an identical 25-liter Ozark Trail hiker backpack. The subject's pack, a private label brand sold exclusively at Walmart, and ran the measurements under infrared. Former FBI Executive Assistant Director Joshua School told CNN this height determination technology is extremely accurate. The result, the subject is a male 5 feet 9 inches to 5 feet 10 inches tall, average build, dark facial hair, a mustache or goatee visible beneath the lower edge of the mask. He then Jim Clemente weighed in, former FBI Supervisory Special Agent, criminal profiler. 2 decades of behavioral analysis. Reviewing the footage for Fox News Digital, Clemente identified what appeared to be a marking on the subject's Music right wrist, visible in the infrared footage through the gap between the glove and the jacket sleeve, possibly Music a tattoo. His position was measured and deliberate. If confirmed through forensic analysis, Music and that single physical marker could help investigators rule individuals into or out of the suspect pool entirely. And a possible Music wrist tattoo on the right wrist of a figure whose face no Music one can see. Write that detail next to the numbers. 5 feet 9 to 5 feet 10. Average build, dark facial hair, possible wrist marking right side. Hold the full picture in your head because the investigation is about to introduce you to a name that maps onto every single one of those data points. Not through a photograph comparison, not through internet speculation, but through a documented 19-year relationship with the last person known to see Nancy Guthrie alive. But before that name, there is one more piece of the forensic picture that most coverage of this case has glossed over entirely. And investigators found a glove approximately 2 miles from New York's home on February 13th, near Orange Grove Road. The FBI confirmed it, visually matched the gloves worn by the subject in the doorbell footage. DNA was extracted, run through CODIS, and no match in the national database of more than 19 million offender profiles. The genetic material belongs to an unknown male who has never been music arrested and entered into the federal system. CNN's Josh Campbell, a former FBI agent, noted on air that the subject's full body coverage, mask, gloves, long sleeves, jacket indicated a deliberate effort to minimize biological trace transfer at the scene. Someone who understood forensics well enough to dress for it, but not well enough to eliminate it entirely because the glove was found and the DNA inside it is now being prepared for investigative genetic genealogy. The question, music, is not whether the science will deliver a name. It will. And the question is whose name it delivers and how closely that name sits to the 4-hour window, the 2007 Craigslist ad, and a friendship documented in banned photographs for nearly 2 decades. His name entered public conversation on February 4th, Music 2026, 3 days after Nancy disappeared. Journalist Ashley Banfield, citing what music she described as a highly regarded law enforcement source with direct knowledge of the investigation, reported on air that Tommaso Cioni may be a prime suspect. And those 4 words detonated across social media within hours. Screenshots, comparison photographs, behavioral analysis threads, all of it built around a man whose name most people had never heard before. February 1st. Here is who Tommaso Cioni actually is. He was born on June 18th, 1975, in San Giovanni Valdo, a medieval hill town in the Valdo basin of Tuscany, Italy, situated between Florence and Arezzo. He moved to Tucson, Arizona, in 2006 at the age of 31. That same year, he married Annie Guthrie, New York's eldest daughter. In a personal biography he wrote for the Taparulan Cultural Association, he described himself with quiet precision. I write when it happens. Music. I study lizards. I play the electric bass. Or I make homemade pasta. For over 15 years, music has taught science at Basis Oro Valley, a charter school in Tucson. 6th grade science, music, and AP biology. His colleagues have consistently described him as music passionate, methodical, dedicated to his students. Annie, in a 2013 interview, called him her greatest teacher. In Music 2020, she marked their 10th wedding anniversary with a public tribute describing him as the most beautiful and intelligent person she had ever known. And this is the full picture of Tommaso Cioni before February 1st, 2026. Music. A teacher, a bassist, a poet, an Italian immigrant who built a quiet life in the Arizona desert and married into a family. Music that until that Sunday morning lived outside the national spotlight entirely. Then the scrutiny began, and it followed music, a specific chain of publicly documented facts. First, Cioni was the last known person to see Nancy Guthrie alive. He drove her home at 9:48 p.m. on January 31st and confirmed she was inside her residence before music pulled away. That places him at that address 4 hours before the figure appeared on the doorbell camera. Second, investigators returned to his and Annie's home 5 separate times during the active investigation. Law enforcement was observed at the property as recently as February 7th, with equipment and camera flashes visible through windows. Third, an online document purporting to be a durable power of attorney connected to Cioni circulated widely. Legal analysts who reviewed the document confirmed it appeared consistent with a standard Arizona real estate transaction. The kind executed routinely when one co-signer cannot attend a closing in person. Official sources confirmed it was not connected to the criminal investigation. Fourth, the type of gloves recovered near the scene. Nitrile, not latex, to match the material commonly used in biology classrooms. Cioni teaches AP biology. That detail spread across every platform music simultaneously. Each individual fact examined in isolation means this is something different than all 4 music stacked together, and the public stacked them together fast. Then on February 16th, 2026, Puma County Sheriff Music, Chris Nanos, ended it or attempted to. And he stood at a press conference and made a music-precise and emphatic statement which is worth understanding in full. He said the entire Guthrie family, including all siblings and their spouses, had music been cleared as possible suspects in the case. He described the family as cooperative, gracious, and as victims. He asked the media directly to report with compassion and professionalism, and stated that suggesting otherwise was not only wrong, it was music cruel. And that statement is on record. It is official, as it carries the weight of the Puma County Sheriff's Office, and by extension the FBI investigation at music is coordinating with. But here is the forensic wall that statement runs into, not against the family, against the physical music evidence. The man on that doorbell camera has been measured. The FBI's forensic unit replicated music, the lighting conditions. The height determination technology used was described by music former FBI Executive Assistant Director Joshua Skula as extremely accurate. And the result? 5 feet 9 inches to 5 feet 10 inches. Multiple investigative journalists analyzing photographs of Cioni standing alongside individuals of publicly known music height estimated that he stands closer to 6 feet, approximately 183 centimeters, consistent with confirmed biographical information. Some placed him at 6 feet tall. The math does not close. If the subject on the porch is 5 feet 9 to 5 feet 10, and Cioni stands near music 6 feet. Cone is not the man on that porch. And that is not an exoneration, that is a measurement, and measurements, music, in a federal investigation built on forensic precision point investigators toward the next question, not the last one. If the man on the porch is not music Cioni, but the evidence still orbits the people closest to this family, and then the architecture of what happened on February 1st requires more than one person. And more than one person means the investigation needs a second name. That name has been there the whole time by standing in band photographs music next to Tommaso Cioni for 19 years. And it starts with a classified ad posted online in April of 2007. April 2007, Tucson, Arizona. Three men who had never met music were each doing what musicians in mid-sized American cities have always done. You posting classified ads and scanning bulletin boards, looking for people to play with. It was pre-social media, pre-algorithm, pre-everything. You posted a few lines of text, described your sound, listed your influences, chatter, and waited to see who responded. Dominic Evans, a drummer, found guitarist, music, Walter F. Gonalves Jr. through a Craigslist posting. Tommaso Cioni, the Italian immigrant who had arrived in Tucson just the year before, who had just married Nancy Guthrie, he's answered music and advertisement in the Tucson Weekly. The three met. They jammed. The sound clicked immediately, grungier and more intense than any of them had initially envisioned. They called the band early black, post-punk, shoegaze, indie rock, and the kind of music built for small venues and loyal audiences who actually listen. They played shows across Arizona, Tucson, Phoenix, Flagstaff. They shared stages music with acts like The Prids, Liars, and A Place to Bury Strangers, its music giving them genuine credibility in the regional indie circuit. In late music 2009 and early 2010, they recorded their debut album at Loveland Studios in Tucson, engineered by Nathan Sabatino. The album received positive reviews in the Tucson Weekly. The name of that album is Life: Love: Love: Murder State. That once moved forward, dark titles are a genre tradition in post-punk with roots music, going back decades. An album title is not evidence. It is not a data point in any investigative sense. But in the context of what happened to Nancy Guthrie, the context of a drummer from that record, now being examined publicly in connection with her disappearance, it sits music differently than it did in 2010. And you do not need this script to explain why. You can feel it reading those words. Music. Now here is what matters forensically. Early black represents something the public conversation around this case has consistently underweighted. Not a casual connection, but a documented, sustained adult friendship built from scratch and maintained across 19 years. Keon married Nancy Guthrie in September, music, 2006, 1 full year before he ever met Dominic Evans. Yes, which means that for the entire duration of their friendship, from the first rehearsal, music in April 2007, to the night Nancy vanished in early 2026, Tommaso Cioni was already a member of the Guthrie family. Every conversation he had with Evans, every road trip to Phoenix, every recording session, every post-tow hour in a half-empty venue, all of it happened in the context of his marriage to NY's daughter. Every story about his life included details about the Guthrie family, about the house in the Catalina foothills, about Nancy. Not because Evans was asking questions, because that is what proximity does over 19 years. Music, it seeps in, it becomes familiar, it becomes absorbed. Evans himself confirmed music, the extent of his direct connection to Nancy, in his February 25th interview with the New York Times. He stated he had met Nancy Guthrie exactly, music, once in 2011 when he brought his oldest son to an Easter egg hunt at her home. One meeting one afternoon in a backyard, music, at 14 years before she disappeared. Drop a comment right now and tell us, after everything this investigation has laid out tonight, what do you think the DNA is going to deliver? We are watching music, this case in real time. And this community has been ahead of the official timeline from the beginning. I'll keep watching, because the next layer of the Dominic Evans connection is where the forensic profile of music this case stops being circumstantial and starts reading like a documented record. And because when music investigators and online researchers began cross-referencing Evans's name against public records, music, in Puma County, Arizona, what they found was not a rumor. It was not a screenshot from an anonymous account, and it was a court docket, and the charges listed on that docket map onto the events of February 1st, with a forensic specificity that the public deserves to understand completely. On February 5th to 2026, 4 days after Nancy Guthrie disappeared, and 1 day after the FBI's first search of the Scion home, an investigative account on X posted a screenshot. In the account, Music, operating under the handle JLR, Investigates published what it described as court records, pulled directly from the Arizona Puma County court system. The document showed Music a criminal record attached to the name Dominic Aaron Lee Evans. Within hours, that screenshot had been shared across every platform covering the case. In multiple media outlets independently verified the records against the Puma County Court database, the charges, music felony burglary, robbery, intent theft, embezzlement, and DUI. Now stop right there. Before this investigation walks Music through those charges individually, and we are going to walk through them carefully, it is critical to establish what this information is and what it is not. Dominic Evans has not been named as a suspect by the FBI or the Puma County Sheriff's Department. He has not been charged in connection with Nancy Guthrie's disappearance. He has not been arrested. When what exists in the public record is a prior criminal history. Nothing more, nothing less. But in a federal investigation where the music physical profile of an unidentified subject has been released, and where forensic music scientists are building behavioral frameworks to understand who executed this crime and how a prior criminal history is not irrelevant. It is a data set. Each music and this data set maps onto the events of February 1st with a specificity that investigators, music, and the public both deserve to understand. Let's start with burglary. Under Arizona law, burglary is defined as entering or remaining unlawfully in a structure with the intent to commit a theft or felony inside. Read the legal definition again and hold it next to what the FBI's music footage shows. A figure who approached a private residence in darkness. Word music. A figure who moved through a gated front entrance without visible forced entry at the gate. A figure who entered the home and physically removed an occupant. That is entering a structure unlawfully. Those are not parallel events. That is the music's same verb set. A person with a documented history of unauthorized entry into structures has already crossed the psychological threshold most people never approach. They have learned how a locked space gives way, and they know how to move them through unfamiliar geometry in the dark. They know where to step and where not to step. Robbery is legally distinct from burglary because it requires confrontation. It requires music, standing in front of another person and taking from them through physical force or the credible threat of it. Most people are incapable of this, not physically, psychologically. Works music, and the threshold between wanting something and being willing to take it through direct human confrontation is one that the overwhelming majority of the population will never cross. Whoever entered Nancy Guthrie's home on February 1st confronted an 84-year-old woman in the dark and physically removed her from the residence she had occupied for 5 decades. That is not a passive act. That is not a crime of opportunity where no one is looking. That music is confrontation. And a person with a documented robbery conviction music has already demonstrated on the record a willingness to cross that line. The theft and embezzlement charges tell a different story about the same person. Embezzlement is a crime of exploited trust. You cannot embezzle from someone who does not give you access first. The crime requires being inside a relationship, inside a system of confidence, and then choosing deliberately and over time to extract music from it. See, and that is not impulsive behavior. That is calculated. That is someone, music, who can maintain the appearance of trustworthiness while operating against the interests of the person who trusted them. Now here is the context that reshapes all of those charges. The 1999 bar theft that surfaced in Evans's record, confirmed through the NYT reporting, was a minor incident more than 2 decades before NY's disappearance. Music. The DUI was a separate charge. And what investigators and online researchers focused on was music, the combination, a pattern of documented conduct across different categories of offense: unauthorized entry, physical confrontation, financial deception, risk-taking despite consequences. Each charge in isolation is one data point. Together, they outline a behavioral architecture. Then Evans spoke. On February 25, 2026, he sat down with the New York Times. His words were measured and direct. He stated that he had music met Nancy Guthrie exactly once at an Easter gathering in 2011. He confirmed he was interviewed by investigators, music approximately 40 minutes, and had not been contacted again since. He described his alibi clearly. He and his wife, Andrea, were home with their children on the night of January 31st through February 1st. His wife corroborated it. Phone data supported the account. He stated what the harassment had cost his family. His 6-year-old son, unable to return home to strangers, posted outside their house through the night. His music wife, a school principal, sitting in a darkened bedroom too frightened to turn on a light. He said with controlled exhaustion, "People get hurt when names get taken." Sheriff Nanos, asked about Evans directly, described him, music, as going through hell. He told the Times he wished he could defend every person falsely accused. He suggested Evans consult music attorneys and pursue liable action against those who had targeted him. But there it is, the forensic tension this case cannot escape. A man who has spoken, who has an alibi, who has been interviewed and not recounted by investigators, and a physical description, 5'9" to 5'10", average build, dark facial hair, possible right W tattoo. Music. That does not exclude him. Not because of a screenshot comparison. It's just because the numbers simply do not rule him out the way they rule out the man standing next to him in 19 years of banned photographs. Music. And the height discrepancy that dismantles the case against Cion being on that porch is the same measurement that places Evans inside the FBI's established range. That is not guilt. That is geometry. And it is where the DNA becomes the only language left. This is where theory ends and science begins. Not speculation, not photograph comparisons, and not side-by-side screenshots on social media. The biological evidence recovered from this case, music, exists in a laboratory right now, and it is being processed by instruments music that do not have opinions. They do not follow YouTube channels. They do not read comment sections. They read genetic sequences, and what those sequences have already confirmed changes the entire architecture of this investigation. Start with the glove. On February 13th, 2026, your music FBI evidence response teams and Puma County investigators expanded their search perimeter outward from Nancy Guthrie's Catalina Foothills home. They were looking for anything the subject might have music discarded during an exit from the scene. What they found in a field near music, a roadside approximately 2 miles from the residence, was a single glove, black night trial. And the FBI confirmed publicly that it appeared visually consistent music with the gloves worn by the masked subject in the doorbell camera footage recovered from February 1st. The glove was immediately transported in music to a forensic laboratory. Edna was extracted and a genetic profile was built. That profile was submitted to CODS, the FBI's Combined Music DNA Index System, a national database containing nearly 27 million genetic profiles, and including more than 19 million from individuals convicted of qualifying crimes across the United States. The system cross-referenced the unknown profile against every entry in that database. No match. Music. The DNA belongs to an unknown male. He has no prior qualifying arrest or conviction on file in any federal or state system that feeds into CODIS. Now here is the detail that the public conversation has consistently underweighted. Investigators did not stop at the glove. They went inside. Puma County Sheriff Chris Nanos confirmed publicly that biological material was recovered from inside music, Nancy Guthrie's home. That material was sent to a separate laboratory for analysis, and Nanos made a statement that deserves to be read slowly. He said music investigators believe this DNA may belong to their suspect, but the lab reported challenges with the sample, not failure challenges. The sample is described as a mixed profile, each meaning more than one contributor's genetic material is present in the same biological trace. Separating contributors in a mixed profile is a technically demanding process. It takes time, and the lab confirmed the technology to process this type of sample is advancing rapidly, and that resolution could music come within weeks, months, or possibly longer, depending on the complexity of the mixture. Here is what the science has already confirmed. Regardless of those processing challenges, the DNA profile recovered from the glove does not match the biological material recovered from inside the home. Two separate contributors, two distinct genetic signatures present at music the same crime scene, separated by approximately 2 meters of desert roadside, one discarded along what appears to be an exit music road, one found inside a home where an 84-year-old woman with limited mobility was physically removed from the place she had lived for 5 decades. Chiquettes, this is the moment the initial theory fractures. If this were a single-person crime, one impulsive actor, one opportunistic event, there would be one genetic profile, one contributor, one trail. But the biological evidence has already confirmed what behavioral analysis of the footage was suggesting. 2 people were involved in music, what happened to Nancy Guthrie on the night of February 1st. The DNA does not care about the theories on social media. And it does not care about which name is trending. It has recorded 2 contributors, and it is waiting to identify both of them. former deputy chief of the NYPD Forensics Investigations Division, Emmanuel Katranakis, addressed music this directly. He told CBS News that genetic genealogy is essentially the final instrument after CODIS, and that if the suspect has a relative who is a convicted offender in any contributing state database, investigators build a family tree around that connection. Not a direct match, a branch, a cousin, a sibling, someone in the extended family tree who submitted a DNA sample to a state database or music uploaded their genetic profile to a commercial platform like Ancestry23 and Me or MyHeritage, without any awareness of what that data might eventually be used to find. Forensic Investigative Genetic Genealogy, music, FIG, is the same methodology that identified the Golden State Killer after more than 4 decades. Use music. The same process that led to Brian Kohberger's arrest in the University of Idaho murders. The same tool cited by music, the National District Attorneys Association, as ushering in a new era of criminal identification. And it does not require the suspect to have ever voluntarily submitted their own DNA anywhere. It requires only that someone in their extended family music tree did. And the probability that both contributors to this crime scene have managed to keep their entire music extended family, every cousin, every sibling, every parent, out of every commercial genealogy database music, and out of every state CODIS feeder system, approaches statistical near zero. One profile is difficult to trace. 2 profiles means 2 family music trees being built simultaneously. There are 2 branches being climbed at the same time by forensic genealogists, whose only job is to find the name at the end of each one. And here is music the question. This evidence places directly in front of the 2 names at the center of this case. If Dominic Evans, a man with a documented felony record in Puma County, Arizona, has a prior music qualifying arrest or conviction that fed his DNA into CODIS, and then the profile on that glove has already been compared against his. If it did not match, it means Evans did not leave that glove. But if the second profile, the partial mixed sample, still being processed from inside the home, produces a viable sequence, that sequence will be run through genealogy databases regardless of whether the subject has ever been arrested. Music. And that process does not announce itself. It runs quietly. It builds its tree in the background. And one music morning, investigators receive a name. The databases are already running, and the tree is already being built. The science is not waiting for a confession. What comes next, in this case, the name the genealogy music delivers, the matched branch in the family tree, is what every person following this investigation is waiting for. And when it arrives, it will close the distance between 2 men in band photographs and a masked figure on a porch at 1:47 in the morning, faster than any press music release ever could. And the first note arrived on the morning of February 3rd, 2026. TMZ received it through music, their tip line, along with 2 Tucson television stations, Cold Music News 13 and KG19. Millions of dollars in Bitcoin. A specific wallet address included. 2 deadlines, music said. February 5th at 5 p.m. local time and February 9th. The letter reportedly contained precise personal details about Nancy Guthrie and her home. Details that are not publicly music available are details that narrow the field of possible authors immediately. Both deadlines passed. The Bitcoin wallet sat empty. On February 5th, the FBI arrested a 42-year-old Los Angeles area man named Derek Kella, not for writing the ransom note. The feds were explicit about this. His text messages to Nancy Guthrie and Tommaso Cioni had not been linked to the original ransom demand. Arkela was charged with 1 count of intent music to transmit a demand for ransom and 1 count of making a harassing phone call after he sent a text to Annie and Music Sion, reading words to the effect of whether they had sent the Bitcoin and that the other party was waiting. His arrest came hours after Savannah Guthrie posted a public video acknowledging the ransom letters and begging for proof of life. Michela appeared in U.S. District Music Court in Santa Ana and was granted a $20,000 bond. And he had no confirmed connection to NY's disappearance. An opportunist, a man who watched the news coverage, saw a window and music reached through it. He was not the source of the original note. Then the communications continued. On February 11th, TMZ received a second message, music, distinct in tone and structure from the first. This one was not claiming to hold Nancy. In this, sender described having information about who took her, or they asked for 1 music Bitcoin worth approximately $66,000 at the time. In exchange for that information, TMZ's music co-executive producer, Charles Latibaudier, reviewed both communications directly, music, and told News Nation the tone was clearly different. Clearly not from the same person who wrote the first note, not a ransom demand, an offer to music inform. On February 13th, a third communication arrived, and in this one warned investigators they should be prepared to go international music to find the suspect, a likely reference to the proximity of the Mexican border, less than 90 minutes south of Tucson. Music. The fourth and final note received on February 16th carried language that former FBI profiler Jim Clemente and ransom music expert David Levin both flagged during their analysis. Whereas the sender described being close to the events, are referred to the primary person involved as the main individual. Organizational language, the vocabulary of someone who understands the operation, had a structure, a hierarchy, a primary actor, and supporting roles, and stated they did not want to touch any payment until an arrest had been made. Clemente's read was measured and specific. The phrase music close to the flame, his description of the sender's likely position, it does not mean the person who lit the fire. It means someone who felt its heat, someone music with proximity to it, someone who knew what it was before the rest of the world did. Now place that alongside what was happening in public view. At the same time, News Nation's senior national correspondent Brian Segrist, music, reported that Thomas Oyon had not been seen publicly for nearly a week by early February. He had not been spotted near the family home since approximately the first week of the month. His attorney had almost certainly advised minimal public presence. That is music standard practice in any active federal investigation. It is a reasonable explanation. But hold it in context because Dominic Evans had also gone silent. Total digital silence. No social media posts, no public statement of concern for Nancy, and no expression of support for a family he had been connected to through Cioni for 19 years. Nothing until February 25th. Music. And when the New York Times published an interview in which Evans stated he felt like someone had taken his name and that innocent people were getting hurt by the speculation. He confirmed he had been interviewed once by investigators approximately 1 week into the case, a session lasting around 40 minutes. He had not been contacted by law enforcement since his alibi. Home with his wife and children on the night of January 31st into February 1st. Sheriff Nanos responded publicly, not by naming Evans as a suspect, but by expressing sympathy for him and suggesting he consider legal action for defamation against those circulating unverified claims about him. 2 men, 19 years of documented shared history, both woven into the fabric of this family through the same marriage, the same music, the same years of proximity, both silent in the same window, both absent from public view in the same days. A silence from one person carries many possible music explanations. Silence from 2 people who have known each other for nearly 2 decades in the middle of a federal kidnapping investigation connected to music, the family they both orbit. That silence has a different weight. It has the weight of a conversation that already happened, a decision that was already made, a set of instructions passed between 2 people before the cameras arrived, and the FBI set up its command post, and the reward reached $1 million. And that reward, music, $1 million, announced by the Guthrie family on February 24th, up from the original $200,000, is the variable that no silence can fully withstand. Because $1 million does not just reward loyalty, it tests it. And it sits on the table in front of every person who knows anything about what happened on the morning of February, music first, and asks them a single direct question. What is music, your silence, actually worth? The ring around this case is not solid music. It never is. Someone always knows more than they have said. The ransom music notes confirm it. At least one person on the outside of this, close enough to feel the heat. Music is already trying to monetize what they know. And the DNA confirms 2 contributors present at the scene. The genealogy databases are building family trees for both of them right now. And $1 million is waiting for the first person who decides that what they know is worth more than what they owe. That crack is already there. The question is, which side of it opens first? As of today, March 1st, 2026, music Nancy Guthrie has been missing for 28 days. No suspect has been publicly named. No arrest has been made, and no one has confirmed where she is or whether she is safe. And the investigation, one of the most heavily resourced missing persons cases in Arizona history, has just entered a critical transition. On February 27th, the Puma County Sheriff's Department released a formal update. The department confirmed it is refocusing resources, moving from the full-scale surge operation of the first weeks to a dedicated detective unit specifically assigned to music this case for the long term. Hondas in their statement was direct. This remains an active investigation and will continue until Nancy Guthrie is located or every available lead has been fully exhausted. Deputies will maintain a patrol presence in the Catalina Foothills neighborhood. Investigators are actively requesting that residents across the surrounding communities submit any surveillance footage, even footage captured miles from the residence that may be relevant to the night of February 1st. Or in the same day, music on February 26th, the investigators released new footage from a home security camera located music approximately 2.5 miles from New York's residence. The clip shows a vehicle moving at speed through that corridor at around 2:30 a.m. on February 1st, minutes after NY's pacemaker app disconnected from her phone at 2:28 a.m. On that vehicle and the cell tower data from every telecommunications tower along that 2.5-mile corridor in the music minutes surrounding 2:28 a.m. is now a focal point for investigators. A digital forensics expert, Heather Barnhart, a specialist with the Sands Institute and Qubit, who worked directly on the Brian Kohberger investigation, told NBC News that whoever is responsible for NY's disappearance left a digital trail whether they intended to or not. Her precise observation was, your phone is the silent witness to your life. It knows everything you do. Music. Just the same infrastructure that makes investigations difficult makes it difficult for the people investigators' music are looking for. The FBI separately deployed what law enforcement sources, music, described to CBS News as a signal sniffer, a Bluetooth tracking device mounted on a helicopter flying low and slow over the search area in an attempt to detect any signal emitted by NY's pacemaker. A pacemaker is an active electronic music device. It transmits. If Nancy is alive, that device is communicating, and in law enforcement has been music listening. Now here's where the forensic picture stands as of this week. The glove DNA, extracted from the nitrile glove, found 2 miles from the scene on February 13th, belonging to an unknown male, returned no match in CODIS. Music genealogy database analysis has been initiated. That process is music running. The DNA recovered from inside the home is described by sources close to the investigation as LOL. And that is the technical designation for a sample where the quantity of genetic material present, music, may not be sufficient to generate a clean, reliable profile for database comparison. The Puma County Sheriff confirmed the lab in Florida is continuing to work the sample. Sheriff Nanos confirmed the next phase will include attempting to separate merged DNA contributors from the home sample. It's like a technically demanding process that requires time but is achievable with current laboratory methods. So here is what that means in plain terms. The science has not failed. It has encountered a challenge. Those are two different things. And the distinction matters because the investigators still have the glove profile clean, sequenced, submitted to music genealogy databases running right now. That profile belongs to an unknown male who has never submitted a qualifying sample to CODIS. But somewhere in the extended network of his family, someone may have uploaded their genetic data to Ancestry under 23andMe Music, to MyHeritage, to GEDmatch. And the genealogologists building the family tree around any partial match do not need a direct hit. They need a branch, a cousin, a sibling, one connected node in the tree. And then the shoe leather work begins. Investigators eliminating branches, narrowing the family, moving toward the end of the line where a music name waits. This is where every thread of this investigation converges. The vehicle on camera at 2:30 a.m. The cell towers logging every device that moved through that corridor in the dark. The digital forensics record. Every phone that powered down at an unusual hour. Every device that disconnected from a known location and appeared somewhere else. Music before sunrise. The Walmart backpack. The 25-liter Ozark Trail hiker being traced through store music purchase records across Arizona. In the belly band holster described by Sheriff Nanos as having unique characteristics, but being tracked through gun stores across Tucson. Music, every data stream running simultaneously, fed into the same investigation, building the same case from music the outside in. And then there are the two names this video has examined, music from the beginning. Thomas Cioni, Dominic Evans. One man cleared by law enforcement. One man who gave a single interview to the New York Times on February 25th described music feeling like someone had taken his name. Confirmed he was interviewed once and not contacted again, and returned to silence. Two men connected by 19 years of documented friendship, a Craigslist ad, and a family whose matriarch has been missing for 4 weeks. Music. This script has not accused either of them. It has not rendered a verdict. It has presented music the publicly available record with the criminal history, the physical description, the geographic proximity, the documented relationship, the DNA, music science near the forensic timeline, and shown you why those facts have placed those names at the center of public examination. That is different from guilt, and it will remain different until the science closes music the distance. Ask yourself this. If you are the detective sitting in that Tucson command post right now, or is watching the genealogy database build its tree branch by music branch, to cross-referencing cell tower pings against a 2.5-mile vehicle corridor at 2:30 in the morning, which thread do you pull first? The glove profile running clean through a database that covers hundreds of millions of voluntary submissions. The phone data sitting in the records of every carrier that serviced Northern Music Tucson on February 1st, or the vehicle speeding through a residential neighborhood at 2:30 a.m. of music 2 minutes after an 84-year-old woman's pacemaker went dark. And the answer is all of them, simultaneously music, because each thread is a different path to the same name. And investigators have been pulling all of them since the morning this music case began. Nancy Guthrie is 84 years old. She music has a pacemaker. She's been specifically absent from the home she lived in for 5 decades, for music 28 days. She was targeted. She was planned for. And someone ran a rehearsal 9 days before they executed the plan. 2 people contributed biological material to her crime scene. A vehicle was captured on camera 2.5 miles away. 2 music minutes after her pacemaker went offline. The science is running. The databases are open. The cell data has been collected. And $1 million is sitting music on the table, waiting for the first person in the ring who decides their silence is no longer worth holding. She deserves to be found. She is still out there, and this case is not over here. If this investigation is something you have been following, if you found this channel through this case and you are still here, drop a comment right now. Tell us where you are watching from. Tell us what time it is. Tell us what you think the forensic genealogy is going to deliver when it reaches the end of that family tree. This community has been ahead of this case from the beginning. Your questions matter. Your attention, music, matters. And be subscribed to this channel right now and turn on notifications. The next video drops the moment DNA results go public or a named suspect emerges. That update will reframe everything laid out in this video, and you need to be in the room when it happens. Share this with everyone following this case. The more eyes on the evidence, the harder it becomes to stay invisible. Music. We are not stopping. not until she is found. Music.